Hey guys, tonight we dive into something a little quirky, a topic you probably never imagined would be part of history's tapestry. Medieval monks and their rather unconventional remedies for insomnia. Yeah, you heard that right. Picture this, it's the 13th century, the world is full of mystery and dark corners, and these monks are trying to sleep. Not just sleep, but actually get some good rest to carry on their sacred duties. And what's their big secret? Well, cheese. Yes, cheese. But not just any cheese. Imagine a pillow stuffed with it. Sounds weird? Trust me, it gets even weirder. The trouble of night. It's late. You've just finished your dinner, and you're trying to wind down for bed. But somehow, your mind just won't shut off. You're not alone. This exact scenario played out across medieval Europe, especially for those poor monks. You might imagine them peacefully sleeping in their humble monasteries, right? Well, not exactly. Most monks back in the day struggled with insomnia, something that would puzzle even today's doctors. But these weren't just any run-of-the-mill insomnia problems. No, this was serious business. Picture this. Long, sleepless nights spent under the cold stone arches of a monastery, when the only sound you hear is the soft hum of your own thoughts and the distant tolling of bells. So, what did these monks do about it? They didn't have modern sleep aids, and they certainly didn't have cozy, memory foam mattresses. Instead, they turned to whatever they had at their disposal. Herbs, prayers, and yes, even some very odd objects. But sleep wasn't just a physical need, it was a spiritual one. And this, my friend, leads us into a strange, somewhat quirky remedy they relied on. Medieval monks didn't just rely on the usual remedies like warm milk or prayers before bed. They had a different solution to their sleeplessness. One that might sound pretty bizarre to us today: cheese. Yes, cheese. And this wasn't just a random snack before bed, no. It was far more creative. They stuffed their pillows with cheese. Now, I know what you're thinking, cheese pillows. But believe it or not, there was method to this madness. Historians still debate whether this actually worked, or if it was more about superstition and tradition than real scientific reasoning. But some claim that the fermentation process in cheese helped release certain compounds that might have had a calming effect, allowing the monks to finally drift off into sleep. But here's the kicker: historians still can't agree on why cheese specifically was used. Some argue that it was due to the strong, pungent scent that helped the monks feel more relaxed, while others say it was just another quirky practice they picked up over the years. Either way, it seems like the medieval monks didn't have much to lose. The night trial in the abbey. Now, let's step back and think about how difficult it must have been for these monks to try to sleep. Monasteries were full of routine and rituals, which sounds comforting, but in the silence of the night, it could get a bit overwhelming. The night trial was a term some scholars used to describe the spiritual struggle monks faced when trying to sleep. Sleep, after all, wasn't just about physical rest, it was tied to their spiritual health, too. So, why were these monks tossing and turning all night? Well, the problem wasn't just physical discomfort or bad sleep hygiene. They lived in an era where the line between the physical and spiritual world was blurry, and their sleeping environment wasn't exactly relaxing. It's not like they had blackout curtains or soothing playlists on Spotify. Instead, they had cold stone walls and an unrelenting sense of religious duty. During the night, while other people slept soundly in their homes, the monks were awake in the dark, trying to make peace with themselves and God. Some monks even believed that their inability to sleep was a sign of spiritual unrest. They saw insomnia as a trial, a form of divine testing. And, just like any medieval test, it was something to be endured. But how did they face this spiritual battle? Some monks would spend their sleepless nights in prayer or meditation, thinking it would bring them closer to the divine. Others would do what they could to ease their minds, often with a mix of prayer, ritual, and good old-fashioned superstition. The night trial wasn't just about staying awake, it was about enduring the mental and spiritual struggles that came with sleeplessness. And in the end, it often resulted in more spiritual growth, or at least, that's what they believed. Historians are still arguing whether the monks' nighttime rituals were about sleep or about struggling with the mind's restlessness in the face of divine expectations. Some say it was a matter of discipline, while others argue it was all about their spiritual connection to God. An unusual pillow. Cheese pillows. All right, let's get back to those cheese pillows. Because, honestly, who wouldn't want to know more about them? So, how exactly did these monks use cheese as part of their nightly routine? In the quiet, cold nights of the monastery, monks would fill their pillowcases with cheese. Not just a little bit of cheese. No, they would stuff the entire pillow with it. The cheese would soften and release its smell, filling the air around them. Sounds strange, right? And it is. But here's the thing, cheese, as strange as it sounds, actually played a big part in medieval life. It was a common food item, and in many ways, it was regarded as sacred. Some say the fermentation process in cheese helped calm the mind, something about the compounds released during fermentation that helped create a peaceful atmosphere for sleep. Did it work? Well, that's up for debate. Some say it was a soothing experience, while others argue it was just part of the monks' daily rituals, giving them a sense of comfort and spiritual peace. Now, the question remains, did this strange remedy actually help them sleep? Well, the answer is not so clear. Some scholars still argue about the effectiveness of cheese pillows. But, to be honest, whether it was the cheese itself or the comforting act of using something so familiar to the monks, one thing is for sure, they sure found a unique way to try to get some sleep. Some modern researchers still debate whether this practice had any real physiological effect or if it was merely psychological. But either way, the monks certainly found a way to make their insomnia a little more bearable. The singing chamber pots. All right, back to the strange and fascinating world of medieval monk remedies. Now, imagine this. You're lying in bed, tossing and turning, trying to sleep, but all you can hear is the sound of your own thoughts, and maybe the faint creak of the monastery walls. You can't even escape it with a nice cup of warm milk or a comforting prayer. But then, something unexpected happens. You start to hear something. It's not the wind. It's not a ghost. No, it's the sound of chamber pots. Yeah, you heard that right. Singing chamber pots. Medieval monks, in their ever-creative search for rest, had this peculiar solution to their sleepless nights. It wasn't uncommon for them to place these chamber pots in the corners of their rooms, and these pots, by some mysterious means, would make gentle, soothing sounds. Some scholars believe it was the sound of the wind passing through the tiny holes or cracks in the pottery, while others argue that it had something to do with the acoustics of the chamber pot itself. But here's where it gets really interesting. The monks actually believed these sounds helped lull them to sleep. They would lie down, surrounded by these unusual, sing-songing pots, and drift off, letting the noise carry them into a peaceful slumber. It wasn't about the sound itself, it was about the comforting, familiar atmosphere it created. This idea of singing chamber pots became part of the nightly ritual. And let's be honest, we've all been there, that one sound that we find oddly soothing at night, whether it's the hum of a fan or the steady ticking of a clock. For the monks, it was the melodic hum of their chamber pots. Historians are still not entirely sure how effective this method was in putting the monks to sleep. Was it truly the sound of the chamber pots, or was it the sense of ritual and tradition that helped calm them? Either way, it became part of their nightly routine. Some scholars even suggest that this practice was based more on superstition and the belief that anything familiar could help bring peace in the midst of spiritual struggle. Maybe we should all try a little chamber pot lullaby next time we're restless. Walking through the night, stepping onto grass. Now, let's move on to something even stranger. Picture this. It's the middle of the night, the moon is full, and the only light in the monastery comes from a dim candle flickering by the window. You're still awake. But then, instead of lying there, tossing and turning, you decide to get up and walk. Yep, walk. But not just anywhere. You step outside, and as your feet hit the cool grass, something magical happens. This wasn't just any midnight stroll. No, this was a method that medieval monks used to ease their insomnia. They would take long walks during the night, often through the monastery's gardens or surrounding fields. There was something soothing about the act of walking in the quiet of the night, listening to the wind rustle the leaves, the soft crunch of the grass underfoot. But why did they do this? Well, it turns out that walking was a sort of spiritual therapy for the monks. The idea was that by moving, they could release the tension in their bodies and minds. Walking was seen as a form of meditation, a way to physically release any spiritual or emotional tension that had built up during the day. Some monks even said that walking helped them focus and meditate, making their minds calmer and more ready for sleep. In a way, this walking ritual also served as a form of penance, a way of seeking spiritual peace. Even if the monks were too tired to pray, they could still find comfort in walking, in the rhythm of their steps. Historians still debate the true spiritual significance of these nocturnal walks. Some argue it was an essential part of their nightly routine, while others claim it was just a desperate attempt to fight off the effects of insomnia. No matter the reason, the walking method was just one of many ways the monks tried to make peace with their restless minds. The source of white noise, bells and chimes. Let's talk about something that you've probably never thought of as a sleep aid: bells. Yes, bells. But not the kind you'd expect to ring for a wedding or a church service. These were the bells of the monastery, and they played an integral role in helping monks sleep at night. You might think that the constant ringing of bells would keep someone awake, right? Well, in the case of these medieval monks, it was actually the opposite. The bells were a kind of white noise that helped calm their minds and guide them into sleep. Monasteries, like many places of worship, were known for their bell towers. The bells would chime throughout the day, marking the hours for prayer, work, and other rituals. But these same bells also rang throughout the night, providing a steady, rhythmic sound that would eventually become familiar and comforting to the monks. It was the type of sound that, in a way, blended into the background, much like the hum of a fan or the soft murmur of traffic outside your window today. The monks believed that these sounds helped create a peaceful atmosphere in which they could sleep. The rhythm of the bells became a part of their nighttime environment, and over time, they found that the sound itself was soothing. Whether it was the physical vibrations of the bells, the consistent timing of the chimes, or simply the familiarity of the noise, these bells helped create a peaceful, almost hypnotic, environment for the monks. Historians still debate whether the bells were used for spiritual reasons or simply as a form of white noise to aid sleep. Some believe the bells were part of the divine ritual, calling the monks to prayer at certain times of the night. Others suggest that the monks saw the bells as a comforting presence, an auditory signal that everything was as it should be, and that sleep would eventually come. In any case, the bell-ringing tradition played a significant role in the medieval monks' battle against insomnia. It may have been the sound of the bells, or it could have been the routine of it all. The monks knew that, no matter how restless the night seemed, the bells would always ring again. The secret of herbs. Strange insomnia remedies. Now, let's talk about another peculiar remedy used by medieval monks: herbs. You might be thinking, herbs? Yes, herbs. While today we might see them as old-fashioned remedies, in that era, they were seen as valuable resources. For these monks, herbs weren't just tools for treating physical ailments, they were magical solutions for soothing the mind and curing insomnia. Imagine this: you're in the monastery, your weary body and tired mind making it impossible for you to fall asleep. So, the monks turned to herbs. Many herbs were known for their calming and relaxing effects. For example, lavender was a popular sleep herb at the time. Monks would place it under their pillows or make tea with it, using its fragrance and calming properties to fight off the long night. In addition to lavender, other herbs were believed to have even stronger sedative effects. Things like alfalfa and chamomile were said to help ease anxiety and help the monks relax, preparing them for sleep. There were even herbs like ginkgo leaves, believed to enhance blood circulation and help relax the body, making it easier for the monks to slip into a restful sleep. Although today we may be skeptical about the power of herbs, back then they were seen as a secret weapon in the battle against insomnia. However, historians are still uncertain whether these herbs truly had any effect on insomnia. Some believe the impact was more psychological, providing comfort through familiarity rather than any actual physiological effects. Regardless, herbs were an essential part of the monk's toolkit. Perhaps the effectiveness of these herbs didn't come from their magical chemical properties, but from the peace of mind they provided the monks. Meditation and prayer as sleep remedies. When it comes to how monks dealt with insomnia, we can't overlook meditation and prayer. Meditation, a term today associated with relaxation, also played a key role in the monks' world during the Middle Ages. Imagine this. Instead of spending long nights filled with anxiety, these monks used meditation and prayer to calm their souls. When they couldn't sleep at night, monks would often turn to meditation and prayer to soothe their spirits. Meditation wasn't just about relaxing, it was also a way for the monks to connect with God. During those long sleepless nights, they would bow their heads, close their eyes, and enter a state of peace through meditation. By focusing their thoughts, shutting out external distractions, they were able to relax deeply. Prayer was another common sleep remedy for the monks. They would pray for hours, sometimes through the entire night. Through talking to God, they found inner tranquility. This process helped them leave behind their anxieties and worries, surrendering them to God. In this way, meditation and prayer offered them a form of spiritual liberation, which likely helped them fall asleep when their minds were at peace. However, historians are divided on whether meditation and prayer were truly effective for insomnia. Some scholars believe these practices were more about psychological comfort than direct physiological benefits. Nevertheless, these spiritual practices undoubtedly provided the monks with peace during the night. The nourishment of sleep for the soul. Did you know? Insomnia is not only a physical torment, but it also challenges the spirit. The monks' insomnia not only affected their health, but also their mental and spiritual well-being. In those days, sleep was considered nourishment for the soul, influencing the monks' connection with God. Therefore, sleep wasn't just a physiological need for the monks, it was a spiritual one, too. Monks believed that only with enough sleep could they remain spiritually alert before God and fulfill their sacred duties. On the other hand, insomnia was seen as a sign of some kind of spiritual disturbance. For the monks, not being able to sleep was viewed as a spiritual trial. However, this mental struggle was not always negative. In some cases, insomnia actually sparked inner strength in the monks. They would use meditation, prayer, and herbs to restore balance to their spirits, often making them more resilient and steadfast in the face of challenges. Even so, there is still debate among scholars as to whether insomnia truly led to spiritual growth in the monks. Some argue that insomnia is simply a physical reaction rather than a spiritual awakening. Regardless, the lack of sleep undoubtedly had a profound impact on the monks' mental and spiritual states. The quiet of night, redemption in dreams. As we come to the final chapter of this unusual journey into the medieval world of insomnia, let's take a moment to reflect. These monks, with their strange remedies and spiritual struggles, found a way to cope with the long, sleepless nights. And through it all, they learned something deeply significant. Sleep, they realized, wasn't just an escape from their earthly toil. It was a path to redemption, a moment of connection with something greater than themselves. Picture it, the stillness of the monastery as the night deepens. After hours of prayer, walking, and quiet meditation, the monks finally surrender to the embrace of sleep. Their minds, once troubled and restless, now find peace. They faced their trials, sought comfort in their rituals, and now the sweet release of rest is theirs. For the monks, sleep wasn't just the absence of wakefulness, it was a spiritual renewal, a chance to be recharged by the divine, a moment where the weariness of the world could be left behind. When they closed their eyes, they weren't simply drifting into unconsciousness. No, they were entering a sanctuary, where the soul could rest and heal. Historians are still unsure whether these practices truly allowed them to sleep better, but one thing is certain. For these monks, their struggle with insomnia wasn't just about physical rest. It was about finding peace, peace in the heart, in the soul, and with God. And that peace, even if fleeting, was all they needed to get through another day. And now, as the story comes to a close, imagine yourself in that same peaceful slumber. The room is quiet, the air is still, and everything is calm. Your thoughts begin to fade, just as the monks did, and sleep, like a soft blanket, wraps you in warmth and safety. With each breath, you let go a little more, sinking into a place of calm, where nothing else matters. You are safe, you are peaceful, and now, the only thing left to do is drift gently into the quiet of your dreams. Good night, my friend. May your dreams be sweet, and your rest be as deep as the silence of the monastery night. Sweet dreams.